It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, for decades he's been playing taps at military funerals, even played at the memorial service for a U.S. president. Now Kansas's most dedicated and prolific bugler shares his story and explains the great honor he feels at each and every performance. Also, the situation got a little hairy, or a lot hairy actually, at this unusual competition in Wichita. Anthony Powell will comb through the details. Plus, it's a throwback to the old days when motorists would fuel up their cars in style. This restored gas station has unique history that makes it an historic treasure. Anna Spencer will tell us all about it. And we know that laughter is the best medicine, but for this Newton man, art has become his best medicine. Chris Frank has his amazing story coming up. Then in our Wild Edge report, wildlife photographer Mike Blair shows us one of his tricks of the trade for getting up close and personal with Kansas wildlife. I'm Sierra Scott. It's time for a half hour of information and inspiration on Positively Kansas.
Positively Kansas is brought to you in part by...
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank Trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
It's always somber, yet inspiring and dignified. U.S. military veterans, by law, have a right to at least 2 uniformed military people to fold the flag and to play taps at their funeral. Tonight, Chris Frank introduces us to a Kansan who has reached an amazing milestone. He's played taps at more than 1,000 funerals and memorials, including one for President Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Taps is a tune Mark Haysville has played at more funerals and memorials than he can remember.
That horn was built in 1960.
The Lindsborg resident arrives early enough to the McPherson Cemetery to warm up while playing along to the radio before the funeral procession arrives. On this warm summer day, Haysville will play taps while members of an American Legion post and a VFW post provide military honors.
And we're always honored to provide military honors, and it's sad sometimes when the family chooses not to have military honors, particularly when their spouse or loved one was a military hero.
Playing taps and doing the military honors can be particularly emotional when it's a friend's funeral. Here, Al Davis, who was in the National Guard, is being laid to rest. Family members are grateful for the honors and the playing of taps.
It meant a lot to me. Al was at the VA when he passed, and he was very patriotic. Actually, the American Legion helped us get VA help. So having the military honors just really meant a world to us, and taps is always so moving. And we just really appreciated the effort and the time these gentlemen took to come out and honor Al.
Haysville says he's played taps at more than 1,000 funerals. He even played taps at the memorial of President Dwight D. Eisenhower when he was laid to rest in Abilene in 1969. Haysville was an Army soldier and part of the 437th Army Band at Fort Riley. It was a day he won't forget.
And we formed up at the train station in the dark.
Case Beer says the Army band was driven from Abilene to Salina to play for President Richard Nixon's arrival on Air Force One at Schilling Air Force Base. Once President Nixon boarded his helicopter to fly to Abilene, Case Beer and the band were bused back to Abilene to play for Nixon's arrival there and then to later play taps.
It was a long day. I remember it pretty well. Nobody was having a whole lot of fun. You know, it was a long ordeal.
Case Beer says he played taps at 40 to 50 funerals while in the Army.
All the trumpet players were on the bugle roster, and your turn came up, you went and played for mostly Vietnam casualties, but any veterans, back then, any veteran that passed away had a live bugler. Nowadays, most of them are using the electronic bugle.
But the group Bugles Across America wants to give veterans' families the option of having a live bugler, whether they perform taps on a horn with or without valves. Case Beer is one of the more than 6,000 volunteers in Bugles Across America. He's been called on to play all across the state of Kansas.
Check, check, 1, 2, check. Check, check, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2.
3, 4.
As awesome as it is, Case Beer's playing of taps, he also uses his trumpeting to play for an oldies band called King Midas and the Mufflers. Case Beer is able to move gracefully from the somber, sober, and sad atmosphere of a memorial service to the lively, happier setting of an evening concert and dance.
I have to stay in shape to do it. Today I warmed up 3 times.
Playing in a band like this isn't a cakewalk for these guys with all the equipment they move around. After all, they're not so big they can afford roadies to do their setting up. King Midas and the Mufflers claims the distinction of being Kansas's longest performing rock and roll band. It was formed in 1965. The band has been inducted into the Kansas Music Hall of Fame. It's had about 30 different members, some who've since passed on, including its founder. But the musicians continue the legacy, and Case Beer says he's happy to be a part of it.
It's a real honor because for some reason this band just keeps making it one way or another. Even if we're missing a guy or something, somehow we come through and get people dancing and everybody has a good time, and that's what it's all about.
So whether it's playing the notes from the more than 100 songs the band plays, or the 24 notes and taps, Case Beer hopes to be doing both for as long as he can.
As long as I can still play.
This is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
If you'd like a bugler for a veteran's funeral, do an internet search for Bugles Across America. They'll work to get one for you. Are you old enough to remember Vickers gas stations? I am. It was actually a Wichita-based company with more than 300 service stations across the middle U.S. Now an important piece of Vickers history is restored to help keep the story alive of this once great company. Anna Spencer has the story from Haysville.
Cruise Main Street in downtown Haysville and you just can't miss it. With its unique design, 2 prominent pump islands, and that classic V logo, the Vickers Petroleum Service Station is an iconic landmark in the community. And now it's receiving some additional recognition. Following an extensive application process, Vickers Station has been added to the Register of Kansas Historic Places and is even being considered for a listing on the National Historic Register. This is the first service station built by Vickers Petroleum, a company known for its innovation not only in oil, but also in building and construction. Achieving historic register status involves quite a bit of research. Haysville Historic Committee Liaison Rose Corby outlines part of the process.
Because who would think that a gas station would be classified as a historic structure? And nobody ever thought to record anything. But it was a daunting task, and there was a little bit of information when I discovered who the architect was, which was John Hickman, an apprentice for Frank Lloyd Wright. That was kind of neat. And you can see that design in the building as well. His influence, Frank Lloyd Wright's influence with the planters and the points and everything. But it was a daunting task, just trying to find the information, finding anybody that had the information. But the biggest thing that I knew that it would be designated or that it had a really good shot was when I found the 50-year anniversary publication from the Vickers Petroleum Company that clearly states that the Haysville building was the first one that they built, and gave me the date of the year that it was built, which was 1954. So I was like, there we go.
In addition to its post-World War modern architecture and historic significance in the oil industry, the Vickers station also survived an EF4 tornado back in 1999, inspiring the community to restore it. Renovated as office space and currently home of the Haysville Chamber of Commerce, the Vickers Petroleum Station serves as a focal point in Haysville's Pride Park district. Now young and young at heart gather at Vickers for the annual Trick or Treat on Main Street, Mayor's Bike Ride, Party in the 060, the Fall Festival, as well as the yearly Christmas tree lighting.
You often see people posting pictures just randomly out here, senior pictures, cars, photos. I mean, it's kind of neat to see those just pop up on when you're scrolling online and you see people that came into town. They're like, oh, this is really neat. You don't know it's here, and they visit for that. So now with being on the Kansas State Register, people will know it'll be a destination spot for anybody looking for those with the old cars and stuff, and hopefully we can make the national too.
The only remaining Vickers station in the country, the city of Haysville continues to add to its nostalgia, welcoming visitors familiar with the service station, collecting pieces of memorabilia, and hoping to someday acquire additional original Vickers signage, ensuring that the futuristic hyperbolic paraboloid design of the 1950s remains a permanent fixture for future generations to come. In Haysville, I'm Anna Spencer for Positively Kansas.
Visitors are welcome to drive out to Haysville and see the landmark service station for themselves. You can find out more about the iconic gas station on the Haysville City website and Facebook page. In life, many of the trials and tribulations we encounter can seem insurmountable, when we're going through them especially. Such was the case for a Newton man. Chris Frank introduces us to Mario Garcia, who turned to his faith and artwork to help him get through stage 4 throat cancer.
I get up in the morning and I want to do artwork. I get excited about it.
Drawing, sketching, painting characters, even cartoon characters, is something Mario Garcia has done since his youth.
And this is my palette.
The Newton resident always had a day job, but he also saved time to paint and sketch. Garcia, on occasion, was able to sell his work once others recognized his talent.
And I got to do some serious artwork.
A current client in Oklahoma has him painting this headdress war bonnet.
It is going to the Chickasaw Nation.
His art projects always give him the opportunity to learn something new.
I wanted to research that and find out as much possible about the Chickasaw Nation, which I did.
But in the spring of 2016, Garcia had to put down his brushes and walk away from his artwork for a season. After getting the diagnosis no one wants to hear. His physician told him he had throat cancer.
I said, I can't have cancer. I don't have cancer. Cancer's not in my family.
He says what started as a small lump on his neck quickly grew.
The next morning when I woke up, this thing just ballooned, and it just continued to grow.
The cancerous lump grew from the size of a walnut to lemon size overnight. Next came radiation and chemotherapy treatments and a feeding tube for nutrition, since he was unable to swallow due to the throat swelling. He lost nearly 100 pounds through the ordeal. Well-meaning friends and family offered remedies and suggestions for his weight loss.
You need that Mexican food. Get some weight back on you.
Garcia became so weak he couldn't stand without help. And though he couldn't stand at his easel, he could still draw on paper. But the cancer thrust him into a dark period in his life. Garcia says he did his best to keep his pain private.
And I really didn't show it to anybody because I tried to keep it hidden, if you will, from especially my daughters. I didn't want them to see their dad crumble.
His children had already endured the loss of their mother years before the cancer. And though he wanted to hide his agony, his sketches became a record of his experiences.
I didn't want them to see their dad be weak, cry, give in. I was never going to give in.
No matter how great the trial and tribulation, Garcia would usually find some solace here with his artwork, communicating through his brushes and pencils.
And it makes me feel better. It takes everything away out of my mind.
But as the treatments continued, his anguish increased. His pain worked into his sketches.
This represents me and how I felt when no one was around. My crying out to the Lord, so to speak, how much more, how much longer? And just with the expression of the pencil itself, making it hard color and dark, and it's because that's exactly how I was feeling, frustrated, you know, mad, if you will, unsure.
No doubt, it's a feeling many other cancer fighters can relate to. And though the artist went through the moments of despair, he was determined not to stay there.
I never lost my faith, but it got hard, and then it got harder. And it got so hard, I just started screaming the best I could. Didn't have much voice, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
Garcia says he drew on his faith in God.
I wasn't mad at God. I was mad at Satan.
Garcia says he prayed and got the answer he asked for. It was the assurance he would get through this. That led to this more optimistic drawing.
He's got me, and I'm okay, and it's going to be okay. And I have not had one issue since.
Garcia had turned a corner and says he began to see improvements, giving him hope of eventual recovery.
I have the victory.
Little by little, Garcia's health improved to where the artist could start using all his tools again. Now, he's painting for his clients from across the country, including these T-shirts for 2 San Diego police officers.
And I've never duplicated any of them, so I don't know how many T-shirts, sweatshirts I've done. I can't give you a number. I have no idea.
Garcia says his artwork continues as part of his therapy, helping to keep his thoughts on faith and being positive as he presses onward with determination that he'll regain the stamina he once had.
Praise God, I'm progressing. Every day I'm progressing, and that's the way I look at it, and I accept everything.
Garcia says his physician doesn't like to use the phrase cancer-free. But Garcia says no cancer hotspots have shown up during his periodic checkups. But he knows there's still a battle to fight.
The war still rages.
From Newton, Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
So as Mario Garcia fights to regain the stamina he once had, he wants to use his experience as an encouragement to others with cancer to never give up. Now here's something you've got to see to believe. Beards, goatees, mustaches, every type of facial hair imaginable was represented in Wichita as part of the 2019 Midwest Facial Hair Showdown. Guys and gals from around the country came to the Air Capital to show their stuff and, more importantly, raise money for a very good cause. Anthony Powell took us to the unique sights.
They came to the well-known Wichita bar Barleycorns, sporting facial hair that would make the guys from ZZ Top proud. But the participants in the 5th annual Midwest Facial Hair Showdown aren't rock stars, just guys passionate about their beards, goatees, sideburns, and helping out charities.
I started the club because in remembrance of my grandparents, because they did a lot of charity work. And then my son, we found out my son's autistic, so it was also to show awareness for that.
The Bearded Monkey Social Club, one of several such clubs in the Wichita area, sponsors the Midwest Facial Hair Showdown. In the past, it has raised funds for HeartSpring, the Ronald McDonald House of Wichita, and several other charities. The 2019 showdown was dedicated to helping the WSU Center for Combating Human Trafficking.
So we pay for survivors of human trafficking to have housing, mentoring, job training. We really walk alongside them so that they can be self-sustainable, and then we help pay for their college education up through a master's degree. So thank you for what you do.
But if you think the competitors were just from the Wichita area, think again.
Yeah, we got Nebraska in the house, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Wisconsin, Minnesota. I think there's 2 people from South Dakota too.
Thanks to celebrities like James Harden of the NBA's Houston Rockets, facial hair has grown greatly in popularity. Beard clubs have popped up all over the United States, and as you just heard, folks are glad to travel to compete and help out charitable causes. People like Mike Coleman, who drove 8 hours to get here. Coleman telling us he's been growing his beard for 7 years. It took him an hour and a half to come up with this octopus-looking creation for the competition.
The bearded community helps each other out. I have a beard club. People come to our competitions, and it is for charity, and we love to help out charity and stuff. But there is a competitive side.
Another great thing about these competitions is that women, yes, women participate.
They come up with an idea in their head and then they make a beard.
It really is fun, and I enjoy, meeting new people, and I like helping the community or whatever we're doing. It's fun. I enjoy it.
And while these events are a lot of fun, there's a lot of hard work that goes into being ready to show your stuff.
It's definitely commitment. Once you start it, and you nurture it and take care of it.
But once you commit, it can open up a whole new world of fun, camaraderie, and helping those in need.
Just do it. It's fun. Once you get into it, you get hooked. You really do.
And it's all for a great cause.
It's all for a great cause.
For Positively Kansas, I'm Anthony Powell.
The event raised $2,200 for Wichita State Center for Combating Human Trafficking. That's even more than last year. Now let's head to the great outdoors, where photojournalist Mike Blair shows us how he manages to get such great shots of wildlife in this edition of Kansas Wild Edge.
If you love to watch wildlife, you owe it to yourself to sit in a blind. True, at the right place and time, you can get spectacular sightings from the comfort of your car. But you'll never see the relaxed, natural movements of wild animals that aren't alerted to your presence. A pop-up blind can be bought for less than $100, and you can leave it out in all weather. Put some corn or other food close by, and wildlife will be drawn like a magnet. I constantly use blinds for wildlife photography, and here in a woodland setting, you'll see what came close in just a few hours one day. I got into the blind before daylight to avoid scaring animals that show up early for breakfast, and it didn't take long for deer to appear. They came from every direction, each stopping for a few minutes to eat before moving on. Pretty soon, a raccoon showed up, fresh off the night shift and ready to den up for the day. He didn't even stop for a bite before he left. Morning light came up and autumn leaves fell in the breeze. A banded Argiope spider roused in the warming air. Squirrels leisurely worked through the treetops until reaching a treasure trove of goodies. Another buck came by, dropping his nose to check for the scent of does before moving on. All this happened in just 3 hours. But add a few days and it was even better. Game birds found the grain. A surprise covey of quail showed up, delightful since these wild game birds are seldom observed while relaxed and feeding. And once onto the free food, they would come back again and again in all kinds of weather. The same was true for wild turkeys. And not just any turkeys, big, wary gobblers with long spurs and beards and showy fans. When sunlight hit their iridescent feathers, spectacular colors showed. It was a great chance to see them at point-blank range, but maybe even better, the blind provided a chance to watch their normal behavior as they strutted and talked while approaching in the early morning light. Besides eating, wildlife often puts on a show around a blind. Food makes it a hangout and interactions are common. This can result in unexpected displays you'll never forget. Like these bucks good-naturedly sparring near the blind. Blinds. They're a great way to see wildlife. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Email us at positivelykansas@kpts.org with story ideas. We're always looking. I'm Sierra Scott. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank Trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.